I am so excited to have you here for Bubbles with Bethany. If you were here last week, you saw we had super fun. I almost said in Vegas because that felt like a Vegas hotel, but it wasn't. It was Orlando. But this week, I am super excited to welcome Avery Carl to Bubbles with Bethany. Avery has the number one, it's the number one real estate firm at eXp Realty in the world, right? Past 3 years in running, is that right? Like just badass. First of all, I might also at one point ask you to turn your camera off so everybody can see your badass Guns N' Roses photo. I just love it so much. And she's a 3-time best-selling author with Bigger Pockets. She's just an all-around badass, and she's going to tell us all about herself. And I am really excited to welcome Avery Carl. Cheers to you, Avery. Welcome to Bubbles with Bethany. Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. All right. So just like little quick housekeeping stuff, just to remind everybody, please put yourselves on mute if you're not talking so that everybody can hear what Avery has to say. But you will have a chance later on after she tells us a little bit about herself to ask questions. You can type those into the chat. We would, of course, prefer to see your lovely smiling faces. If you can come onto the camera and ask questions, you can use the hand raise function there and we will call on you. But Avery, so you know the drill. And I love this because I always ask the exact same 2 questions, but the conversation is never, ever the same because you all are so interesting that I get different answers and then we just talk about whatever. So the first question I always want to know, Avery, what is your unique superpower?
My unique superpower is remembering things, which don't test me today because that's not it won't work. But any house I've ever sold, you could show me just like the living room and I will remember the exact address and the exact person who bought it. And sometimes we've sold houses several times because we've done over 5,000 transactions. So I will remember every little thing about it. And then also I know like every word to every classic rock, classic metal, classic punk song in existence as well. But that doesn't get me very far.
Well, I don't know. That'd be fun at parties. I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're definitely younger than I am. When you say classic rock, what are we talking about here?
Oh, like anything prior to 70s, mostly 80s, some, nothing newer than 92. Like once grunge started coming along, it kind of stopped being as fun. So like in our spare time, like we took our kids to Madison Square Garden. We live in Florida, but we took them up to New York to see Kiss's final show this year. And they've seen AC, they're 5 and 3. They've seen AC/DC, they've seen Judas Priest, they've seen Iron Maiden. We're going to see Judas Priest for Mother's Day. So
I love that.
all that. Yes.
So do you ever do music festivals or is it always like the single show?
So we did there was one last year called Power Trip Festival that was Guns N' Roses, AC/DC, Priest, Maiden, Metallica. But we typically don't do festivals because it's just so long and a lot for the kids. They're little. So we kind of do the one-offs for now anyway.
Yeah, I tend to now as you get older too, that starts to I took my daughter to a few festivals because she's a teenager. And then at one point I realized like I think I'm actually too old for this now. Although I'm making an exception for Bottle Rock this year to see my real mom, who is Stevie Nicks.
Oh, yes. My real mom is Joan Jett. So
Yes, perfect. I love it. We don't have to fight over moms.
no.
So I love this, and I didn't mention when I was introducing you that you are like the short-term rental queen. I mean, tell us how your unique superpower supports you in that business. I mean, you've done a ton of business. Let's hear about how your superpower helps you there.
Sure. So I kind of backed into being a real estate investor and in real estate at all. So in another life, I graduated undergrad. We'll start there in 2009, which was the worst time in the world to graduate and be looking for a job. And so I've always played music. I was in a band in college in Austin. I went to UT. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to keep playing music until the job market comes back around and bartending. So when the job market did come back around, it was about 5 years later. And so I went back to school, got a master's degree. I met my husband when we lived in New York, moved to Nashville, got a master's degree. And I said, oh, well, I'll work in the music industry. This will be wonderful. There will probably be a lot of ex-musicians that are now, having big kid jobs. And so I did that. And I hated it because it wasn't. It was a bunch of dorks who were willing to work for $0 to say they were in a room with like some stupid country band last night, and kind of sucked. And it pays nothing because there's always an intern who's willing to do that sexy work for free. And so when we moved to Nashville, our agent at the time was really trying to get us to buy in this like really hip, fast appreciating area of Nashville. And we were like, no, thank you. We're moving from Brooklyn to Tennessee. We're done with neighbors. We want to be out in the country. And so we bought a house out there. Long story short, we ended up buying a long-term rental in Nashville that cash flowed about the same amount per month that I was making at my job. And so I'm like, okay, this house that's just sitting there while we're sleeping is making the same amount of money while I'm busting my ass every single day. So then we kind of got into real estate investing. And our second purchase was a short-term rental. And this was back in 2015. So there weren't coaches. There wasn't really anything on YouTube about this. There weren't gurus for damn sure. And so we kind of had to figure out how to do it on our own. So my superpower has helped me with the short-term rentals in trying to figure out back then, and then help it, all the way up to now, forming our standard operating procedures, how to, just our standard processes for how to run these things, how to identify a good one, how to identify a good market, but really just how to choose and manage short-term rentals. And then my company, the Short-Term Shop, we only work with short-term rental investors. So that's where the superpower comes in, because I can remember every single little house. And when a new client comes to us and says, hey, I'm looking for this criteria in this market, I can remember, oh, so-and-so bought one of those like 5 years ago. Maybe they're ready to sell, and get them something off market. So that's how it helps.
Nice. That's impressive. And I'm always excited to see when someone takes their own intrinsic powers and turns that into a money-making machine, which it sounds like you have, which is so exciting. I love that. So, okay. So you kind of alluded to where I think you might be going. And I always have and I say this every week, I kind of have these clunky transition. I probably should work, Jade, we should work on some transitions so that I'm a better host when I move to the next question. Cause I'm usually like, okay, let's talk about what conscious wealth means to you. But I always talk about one of my dreams and my passions is to help people create conscious wealth. One of the ways I do that is to help them, I always say, practice safe sec, which is to raise capital from OPM to scale their real estate business. But whatever it is, whatever the way is to help people create conscious wealth, I'm passionate about. But when I talk to people about that, I realize that everybody has sort of a different meaning for that, what that means to them. So I'm always curious to know what conscious wealth means to you.
For me, freedom of time, specifically to spend with family. So I was raised by a long line of stay-at-home moms. I am the first woman in my family to have a career, which being a stay-at-home mom is significantly harder than what I do. That is the hardest, most important job. But even though I always wanted to have a career, I always really appreciated the way that I was raised. And so as I've, come into my own career, I remember back like when I was working those jobs after I got my master's, working for bosses and like trying to figure out, okay, I don't have kids now, but when we do have kids, how can I make it to where I have that career that I want to have, but also give them the experience of like the stay-at-home parent experience? And so for me, being able to give them both, which my husband and I have kind of sort of figured out. I'm not saying we're doing everything right. We do a lot of shit wrong, but in terms of time and kind of giving them the experience almost of having two stay-at-home parents while we both are building our real estate portfolio and our real estate business is something that we've been able to do. And that's what conscious wealth is to me.
I love that. And that it's so cool that especially in this after COVID, the one thing that COVID was good for is that we figured out that everyone could work from home. Or not everyone, most people could work from home. And I don't know about you, but I'm actually way more productive at home than I get so much more done. Now I do find I work a lot more when I'm at home, but that you take that hour commute away, and that frankly, the 2 hours of getting ready and drying all this hair away and all that stuff, right?
Yes.
then there's a lot more work to be done. But you're right, there's so much power in teaching our kids that you can be a badass and still make it to practice or games or whatever, right? And that you
Mhm.
don't have to miss out on all the things. I mean, are there sacrifices you have to make when you're building a business and you're not entrepreneur? Sure, of course. But I'm a big believer that I don't want that sacrifice to impact my kid. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a really good way to look at what conscious wealth means, because it is always more than money. I've never heard anybody say conscious wealth means being able to buy a bunch of shit to show off and show how cool I am. No one ever says that, right? It's always about the resources that you can use to buy some sort of freedom, right? Time, location, whatever. And I think that's a really cool thing about this business in particular, this real estate investing business, because it does allow you to make money while you sleep versus, the grunt getting coffee for $15 an hour, which of course when I
Yeah.
was a kid, more like $4 an hour. That's because I'm old.
Yeah.
My daughter was telling me she got a job and she is a lifeguard at a water park. And she's like, oh, I'm
Sounds
just making
amazing.
I know, like so much fun. She stands there and she like gets tan and
Gives people the nod, like,
yeah,
okay, you can go
right.
slide.
Yeah, he don't run, whatever. And then she gets, to go to the water park and she was like, oh yeah, it's just minimum wage. And I'm like, okay, or so no, it's a little more than minimum wage. And she was like $17 an hour. I'm like, I literally had a college degree and made $15 an hour after that. So I
Yeah.
was like, how times have changed. Yeah.
Yes, they have. I passed by Five Guys Burgers earlier and they're hiring for $19 an hour.
Yeah, In and out here, they pay really well and they give like benefits and all the things, right? I'm like, good. I mean, that's good because it used to be you could work 17 hours with no break and make $4 an hour. So
Yes.
I make it sound like I worked in the mines as a child. No, it wasn't quite that. It's like more like Applebee's,